The Other Shore, Thich Nhat Hanh, Chapter 12. Everything is a formation. The 12 links of interdependent arising and their extinction are also not separate self-entities. The teaching of the 12 links, Nidanas, presented in many commentaries, aims at explaining the cycle of samsara, karmic retribution, and reincarnation. These teachings belong to the category of conventional truth and are not in accord with the deepest teachings of Buddhism. That's why we have to restore the Nidanas, so they will lead us to the ultimate truth. The ideas of reincarnation, karmic retribution, samsara, the cycle of birth and death, did not originate with the Buddha. These ideas were already current in India from the 7th or 8th century BCE, before Sakyamuni Buddha was born. They can be found in several of the Upanishads, some which appeared before the Buddha's lifetime and some which appeared later. The belief in karma is that one must suffer the consequence of whatever one does. One reaps what one sows. People believe that they are in a cycle of rebirth in which their future life is determined by their actions in this life. They believe that there's an immortal soul within a person's body, and when this body disintegrates, the soul leaves it, looks for a new body. The idea of the cycle of samsara goes along with the idea of the soul. Buddhism, on the other hand, does not maintain that there is an immortal soul. Buddhism adopted the teachings of karma and samsara, but modified them in important ways. Interdependent arising. Interdependent arising is a fundamental Buddhist teaching describing the manifestation of phenomena. All things arise in mutual dependence on one another, as a result of the coming together of many causes and conditions. The Sanskrit term for interdependent arising, pratitya samutpada, means independence. Things rise up. I repeat, in dependence. Things rise up. Over time, 12 has become the number of links, nidanas, most often used to describe interdependent arising. But the Buddha didn't always speak of 12 links. Various times he used different numbers of links to illustrate interdependent arising. In Plum Village we have taught 10 and 12 links of interdependent arising, and more recently 5 links. Traditionally, the first link is delusion. According to this teaching, delusion or ignorance, avidya, gives rise to samskara, which has been translated as impulses, action, disposition. So, delusion gives rise to wrong action, wrong impulses, the kind of energy that is blind and that will bring suffering. Then because of actions there is consciousness. Based on consciousness there will be body and mind. Because we have body and mind, we have 6 sense organs and their object. Because we have sense organs and their object, we have contact, touch. Because of contact there will be feeling. Because there is feeling, there is craving. Because you have craving, you grasp. Because there is grasping, there is existence, or being. Because there is being, you have to be born, and to suffer samsara, the cycle of reincarnation. Because you are born, you have to grow old and die. The 12 links. Delusion, action, consciousness, body and mind 6 sense organs and their objects: contact, feeling, craving, grasping, being, birth, old age and death. That is the traditional way of presenting many Nidanas. When taught in this way, the 12 links aim to explain reincarnation and rebirth, but do not help us to touch the ultimate dimension. Is sugar sweet? The first shortcoming of the traditional interpretation of the 12 links is the explanation of samskara. The second link, the word samskara, means formation, a composite or compounded thing. But when people want to use the 12 links as a way to explain rebirth, they interpret samskara as meaning karma, the actions of body, speech, and mind that impel us into another life. Actually, the Buddha did not use the word samskara like this. He used it to describe the phenomena that we perceive in the world. When you drink your coffee, you may take it with sugar. The easiest way to break sugar into its constituent molecules is to put it into your hot coffee and stir it with a spoon. The sugar crystals dissolve into molecules of sugar so tiny that no filter can retain them. It's still sweet. But if you go further and ask your chemist friend to break the molecule of sugar into atoms, which you can do with a mass spectrometer, you get a few trillion carbon atoms, a few trillion oxygen atoms, and a few trillion hydrogen atoms. None of these three elements is sweet. The sweetness is made only of non-sweet elements. The carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen atoms, when combined in the right way, make sweetness. If you remove any of these atoms, there will be no sweetness. If you can bring them back together again, there will be sweetness. Suffering is like that. Happiness is like that. Buddha is like that. A cloud is like that. Everything is like that. All things are formations. A flower is a formation. A tree is a formation. A body is a formation. Anger is a formation. Anything that is formed by the coming together of everything else is a formation. That's why the word formation is a very good English translation of samskara. Second shortcoming of the traditional teaching on the 12 links is that it leads us to identify our 5 skandhas as the cause of craving, grasping, attachment to being. It implies that because we have consciousness, a body and a mind, 6 sense organs, contact, feelings, that's why we have craving. But look at a Buddha. A Buddha also had consciousness, body and mind. A Buddha has 6 sense organs, contact and feeling. But a Buddha can be without craving. A Buddha can produce freedom, non-attachment, compassion and loving kindness. And when a Buddha sees suffering, she gives rise to the energies of mindfulness and concentration, allows herself to be touched by what is around her in a way that allows compassion and loving kindness to be born. These are very good things to allow to develop. So to say that contact and feelings can only bring craving and grasping is not true. You cannot blame your body and mind for your afflictions. Your 5 skandhas can also bring enlightenment. They can bring understanding and love. Seeing formations as they really are. If you have delusion, you see a formation as having a separate self. When you see formations in that way, you think that they have a beginning and an end, and the notions of birth and death arise. But with wisdom, we can look at formations and see that their true nature is the nature of no birth, no death. If you touch the nature of no birth, no death in a formation, You're truly seeing that formation as it is. As the notions of birth and death always go along with the notions of being and non-being, it is a shortcoming of the traditional presentation to blame suffering on being. How can being be possible without non-being? Being, as one of the Nidanas, should be understood as being and non-being. In fact, we suffer not because of being, but because of the notions of being and non-being. Contact and feelings can bring either craving and aversion, or compassion and freedom. Depends on how we use the sense organs and contact. Contact and feeling can give rise to grasping, but also to release and freedom. We suffer because we cling to the notions of being and non-being. Either we are afraid of being, or we are afraid of non-being. But with wisdom, not only are you free from the notions of birth and death, you are free from the notions of being and non-being, as we have already learned. 5 links. Now we can understand how our suffering comes about, based on delusion. We see formations as having separate self and as permanent. We see them in the light of birth and death. So we look at everything in terms of being and non-being. That's why we have to go round and round, navigating always in the realm of samsara. We can simplify this idea with just 5 links. Delusion, formations as separate self-entities, birth, death, being, non-being, samsara. The Heart Sutra reminds us that the links are not separate self-entities. There's not a linear progression between them. They all intercourse each other. It's not that one link arises first and is followed by a second one, which in turn is followed by the third. They all arise together in dependence upon one another. And when one is there, the others are there as well. That is what is meant when we say that the links are not separate self-entities. Ideas of a separate personal self or soul are inextricably entwined with the ideas of birth and death, being, non-being, the idea that non-human formations also have a separate self. You see your father as something separate from you. And in the same way, you see the left as something separate from the right. And this is the worldly way of looking. When we talk of the extinction of the links in the light of the Heart Sutra, we see that the extinction of one of the links, inter, is with the extinction of all the other links. We cannot say that delusion is born and then delusion dies on its own. What we can say is that non-manifestation of delusion is also dependent on the non-manifestation of the other links. Delusion is extinguished when we no longer see formations as separate self-entities. When these links cease to manifest, the links arising from wisdom and leading to ultimate truth can manifest. If you don't have delusion, then you see formations as they really are, and then you don't see birth and death anymore. Not seeing in terms of birth and death, you're no longer caught in the notions of being and non-being. You get out of samsara. You are in nirvana, the extinction of all notions.